Hello, and welcome to Milestone Mindset Live. Our topic today is impact. Are you making one? I'm Nancy Sargent, your host. I'm the founder of Sargent Marketing and the creator of the Milestone Marketing Blueprint. And I help small businesses, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits generate more revenue. And I'm here with Josh Kilgman of Yearly. And he is helping nonprofits, particularly, but others as well, share their impact with technology. And we'll be getting into that later. And our conversation today, though, is really going to be about impact. We all make one every day, and our organizations do as well. And we're going to get started with that. Before we do, I thought it would be fun to bring up some definitions of impact. Impact is the action of one object coming forcibly into contact with another. That sounds harsh, forcibly into another, but it really does mean impact of two things touching, or two organisms, two people, two thoughts. So there are many, many ways that there can be contact with another. I don't really think it always has to be forcibly, but that's what Merriam-Webster says. And then what we're going to be talking about today is impact having a strong effect on someone or something. This is what Josh is here to share with me today. And I'm going to give Josh a moment to introduce himself a bit further, and then I'm going to mention how we met. There was an impact on how we met. And then we're going to get into our conversation. So Josh, welcome. And please let us know a little bit about you and Yearly.
Yeah. Hi, Nancy. I was just thinking the same thing about the impact when we met for the first time. And that was in my home state of New Jersey, which I thought was really cool. But thanks for having me. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Yearly. We're a platform for nonprofits and foundations and schools and companies that have social impact teams that want to do better in their community to make digital, annual, and impact and donor reports that are all web-based and show impact. So this is like a really hot topic for our customers right now, and really any organizations that want to show off what they're doing. So people that are connected to organizations that have a stake in that game, know where the needle's going. I think how you do that and the intent and how you communicate, that's really, really the key.
And really, anyone who's listening today will benefit from this conversation, because we're going to talk about how you share and show that impact. And you use the word intent or intention there. And that's very important to the ultimate impact that you're going to have. If you're clear on your intention and you're clear on what it is you're trying to do, you mentioned moving the needle, then it's more likely that you will do it because you have your eye on something and you're looking to measure something. But really, we have an impact every moment of our lives, on ourselves with our thoughts, and on others, either one-on-one or as a group. So we are talking about organizations here that generally report something, but really impact is all around us. And hopefully gently is better than forcibly, like that initial definition said. And so if you're an employee, even needing to let your employer know how you're making an impact, this will help you. So let's talk about, if we can, Josh, some examples of the nonprofits that you work with, some of the examples of the impact that they're making that they get to show with technology.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with our company Yearly, customers that are in the nonprofit space, even higher ed, want to show off the stories of impact. So when I mention intent, I'm thinking about how we sit back as marketing and communication, even fundraising leaders, and think, I wonder if the stakeholders, like the people in their community, are bored In the case of nonprofits, it's probably donors or alumni, maybe volunteers. Like I wonder if they know what we're out there trying to do. And you have all these communication pieces and you're hitting them over and over with it. But you don't often get feedback on, what they're thinking. So what we see with yearly customers is an opportunity to create reports where you can take that intent and lay it out with stories of impact. So, a typical nonprofit like, a United Way that we work with in Florida called United Way Suncoast, or Cornell University in New York is trying to tell stories to, a really specific audience that is either a beneficiary of their programs and their services, or they were like with, a university, they're talking to alumni, and the stories that they have the opportunity to tell is how they can express that, intent and show them like how that needle is moving. And how you tell those stories, I think can really engage the people that you're talking to or not. I think that's on the surface with, physically how it looks and how it feels. I mean, down to, using digital technology to see if it's easy to actually view and follow along on a cell phone. Mm-hmm. Does it look like the rest of your brand, from that marketing perspective? And then the content in terms of what you're writing and what you're showing, which is text, video, social media. How do you package that up in a way that's really interesting? And what are you talking about? And if you want, we could talk about unpacking that and what works and what may or may not work.
I would love to, if you could, give even an example of the story that was being told, or the high level of the story that was being told, and then how did that unfold? Let's talk about how it unfolded in technology, but it may also lead to other multimedia as well. So let's see if we can be a little bit visually specific with a storyline that unfolded.
Yeah, I mean, it's a typical great way to package up a story or piece of content. And this is probably true for anything you might post on social media. It doesn't have to be for a full annual report or an impact report or a donor report, which is where my examples come from. But with Cornell University, they have a program within the College of Ag there where they are showing off alumni that left Cornell and went and started companies. And those companies are helping with food sources in the state, and they're either eco-friendly or they're using agriculture in New York as part of how they source their food, and then they're selling consumer goods, right, or B2B. So I think there's two ways that they could have told the story. Way number one, which I'll give you the spoiler right away, they didn't go, is saying that Cornell was so great. Here's a list of the people that left and started companies, and they just have a list. The second route, which they did take, is they focus in on an individual and the success that they had, and the underlying message is that it's Cornell's help that they were able to be successful. But what they're talking about is how they're benefiting and impacting the state of New York and the whole community around them. And they're physically showing a picture of that person, and it's getting really personable, because if it's really personable, it could be really memorable. So I can almost picture, like the packages of the food or the farm that they showed in the stories that they told. And when you package that up with, in reports at least, a web-friendly format, which means not a ton of text, it's probably complemented with the right amount of photos and maybe some existing videos or previous social media posts that you have. It's really interesting. It's really web-friendly. And then it's memorable at that personable level. So you walk away really understanding and feeling like, oh, I really get what this program is doing. It doesn't feel self-serving. And, you do that person after person, alumni after volunteer after donor, and you tell that story. And that could be, applicable to so many things that you do in marketing, whether it's for yourself, like you said, with a colleague or a boss, or one story you want to post on social media for your brand.
You mentioned memorable, and let's tie that back to the word impact. That's the key. And marketing should be simple, should be memorable, should be repeatable and repurposable. And I love the example that you gave that Cornell did by highlighting the individuals. When we do media relations for companies or blogging or any storytelling, we always need to flip the story. I say the client is doing something. They come to you to help tell a story, to communicate a message, of to underscore what they're doing, but we must tell the story through a human lens, or in some cases it could be through the story of pets. And you mentioned the ag school and animals. I'm working on something right now for a nonprofit that the flagship modality is a clay painted heart that is painted by individuals. And this was born by using something like this in a bereavement group that the founder was part of many years ago, and is now turned into a larger organization. And this organization, the Connecticut chapters, are painting hearts. The community is painting hearts that will be going to seniors in the area who have pets in holiday bags.
Mm.
It is these seniors need these companions, the love in their life, their dogs, their cats. This
Right.
is mostly about dogs. But they have tough choices to make: rent, medicine, utilities, and their pet. And so there's an organization that is helping them with pet food and vet bills and all that. And this symbol of hope, this happens to be a Barbie themed one,
Very timely.
to go along with the movie that's out right now. But the whole story that we're telling, in order to get the media coverage component of it, has to be about these seniors who are going to get the hearts and the hope and the symbolism, and the community at large who is creating this love and this hope for them. Not about what the organization is doing, but that story will come out. So what you just described and what I'm describing here is really, really important for our viewers to hear. And again, it's in reports, it's in impact reports, also the annual report, press releases. Always need to start with that. Articles, blogging, social media always feature the outcome, the hope, the help, the milestones that are happening for individuals or a movement or a cause. So I really like that example that you gave with Cornell.
Yeah, if I were to give a bottom line, it's don't talk about yourself, talk about what you're doing, and it'll just naturally flow if you keep kind of checking in on that.
And connected to who your audience is and why do they care? What's in it for them? So
Yeah, and stories are hard to collect and figure that out. I mean, sometimes you can spend a lot of time trying to source those. I know there's this company, Memory Fox, that does a good job helping organizations collect and store all that type of stuff. So there's tools out there where tech can help you do it. So last minute, you're not scrambling trying to figure out what are we going to show on the impact side.
that is a really important statement that you just made. Let's say that keeping track of those impact stories all year long is important. Hopefully you have a testimonial file, but hopefully, it might be good to call something an impact file. And how do you know if you're making that impact? Sometimes you can just feel it. Sometimes you actually have hard data. And if it's a story that can show a change or an effect on someone or of something, that is an impact. What kind of data is applicable to show impact?
It's really specific to the organization, but I think boiling it down to those big, bold metrics that display, things that are tied to your goals. So, I mean, if your company or your organization has goals to help 100 people and you hit that goal, then when you're giving messaging back to your audience, tell them how many people you helped and what you helped them with. I think it gives a sense of scale and quality at the same time. But I mean, there's also metrics about tracking all the communication that you're putting out there. So we talked about annual reports before. It would be nice to know if people are reading them and taking a look at that and seeing, how much time people are spending with them. Just like you share metrics with your stakeholders, you want to track your own metrics too, because all this stuff we're talking about takes a lot of work and time that you're putting into it, and you want to know that it's going to be worth it.
Actually, I say the most time is the gathering of the information and the crafting of the storytelling. And you sometimes need to talk to several people to get a well-rounded view of it. You want to talk about the person or the group that had the impact on them. You want to talk about the different layers of people that were involved in the different components of it. You may want to talk about the founder of an organization who you helped, as well as the founder of the organization that's doing the helping. So that's actually a fun part. And then gathering the story, actually, it becomes many stories. I'd like to talk about in the impact report, how you put all those together. If we're on the marketing side telling stories, we want to know who's the audience that needs to receive that story and who's the best or what individual or group or body of animals, they're on my mind, pets that are being helped or doing the helping. So that is really key on who's the lead. I say the story a lot of times can have the same bottom third, but what is built upon at the top is the main lead, if it were being told in media. And everything's media today, social media, blogging, emails, the subject line, what's the impact? Nothing gets opened if your subject line in an email does not have impact. And then you have to deliver on that in the top of your email as well. And then you get to tell your story. I always say it's awareness, consideration, and decision. So in an impact report, how do you pull together many stories?
Divided up by programs. So in impact reports and annual reports, you typically have that table of contents that starts with an introductory message or letter or video that comes from the head of the organization. And then you want to dive into the storytelling, but you want to be intentional. At least this is what I see from a lot of our customers at Yearly is being intentional about dividing it up by program. So if you have a program that covers, let's say it's a healthcare organization and there's a program that covers treatment or multiple programs within treatment, first you talk about that. And within that, you're thinking about the different types of treatments that you offer, and you can explain that. And you can show the metrics there in terms of how you help people, the number of people that you helped, what the results were. Those are the metrics. But then those examples that you give, almost like those case studies, I think that's going to be the stories of impact, where you're going to show specific people that were treated because of your healthcare efforts or healthcare facility, right? That's when you're focused on an individual or a family or a group of people. And then you have your template, right? Then you go to the next section of your report and you're doing the same thing for the next program. And then quickly, building out that structure or skeleton wireframe. You have your table of contents, so then you can fill in the blanks. I think that's the way to get started. And then you'll know what type of stories you need to collect. Otherwise, it could be helter skelter, and I've definitely been there.
Yes. And when you're collecting those stories to support that data, I want to give a tip of paint the picture of the outcome of what could happen. Can an individual now get on a plane and go see their grandchild in California? Did they stop smoking and then have better health? Mm-hmm. Did they get access to something that made something in their life better? So you want to keep taking a step back, and and say what happened from all of this. And those are often your headlines. And only when you get them engaged in that interesting topic will they then go deeper to find out how, generally speaking. And the how is the consideration of your organization. And do we want to support you? Do we want to buy from you? Today, aligning with the values of a brand are so important. And I'm not sure that people look at the impact report for this purpose, but if you're hiring and recruiting, more and more today, people want to know that their values and your values align. And that will make for positive success and outcomes all around.
Something you said made me think of an interesting story that I saw from the Center for African Studies at Harvard University. And the story, or this piece of the story, had no written words in it. It was just a map. And in an impact report, they embedded a map of countries in Africa showing where their graduates were living. And then, throughout the report, you could see the different stories of who those people are and the impact they were making on their communities because of what they learned at their school. But the map was so telling, and it just kind of shows people are all over the place and they're making a great impact. And it was interactive too, just embedded in the report. I thought that was a really creative way to tell a story. I think infographics could probably do the same thing. So there's a lot of creative options, I think, to try to communicate all that stuff that you just we're laying out there, which is really important.
Images are so important.
Yeah.
And I'm actually collecting 2-word phrases. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I'm trying to notice them. And it was spurred on by a conversation I was having actually with my adult son. And he said, we were chatting and something, and he said, say less. And it was appropriate what he said. I was like, oh, that is the best phrase, say less. So I've been challenging my team, even in our writing, how can we say less? And there's really magic in a 9-word email, like 1-sentence email and everything. So I challenge everyone in impact storytelling. How can you say less and have more of an impact? Choose your words carefully. Have active sentences rather than passive. Instead of saying, since 2020, we've done da, 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 start the sentence with the outcome. We've been creating or this change has happened in this community since 2020. If you need to put the date there, just always flip it. And at a certain point, you have to have pencils down, which is another 2-word phrase that I'm collecting in my little mind story box. And so visuals are really a key to be able to say less, put your pencils down, and have a greater impact.
You can combine those two. I mean,
Absolutely.
100 people, I'll see, 100 written across the screen, and then underneath it'll give a little detail in 3 or 4 sentences, and then some imagery, around it. So, I think that's a lot easier to communicate than a 1,000-word story about the topic. And, you probably already have a blog about it somewhere on your website, for your brand. So just use these communication points like reports or social media posts as teasers, and then, read more here, ... And someone can click and read on if they really want to dig in.
That's also really important. I was working with a client yesterday who's getting ready for a trade show, and she recently put an ad in the association's newsletter, and now she's going to be displaying there. And we looked at the retractable banner that she'll have in front of her booth, the tabletop easel poster, and then a flyer that she's giving away. And that's what I helped her see. Fewer words, more visual, big impact, maybe QR code on the front of the retractable. The poster could have a little more detail of a specific program with another QR code. And then the flyer can have a little bit more information about the detail of the services. And then she wanted to put even more on the back of how to work with her and all that. I said, no, please save that for the conversation, and also try to get email addresses for your newsletter there. But just like you're saying, the impact report has a certain amount of information, but the social and the blogging and the web pages and everything else is part of a bigger story. And no one individual is going to read all of that or see all of that, but there is layering, and different things do catch the eye. And if you can get third party credible media to tell your story as well, that's even better. So one of the things that we talked about before was a timeline, or the time it takes to share your impact. And we've talked about the time that it takes to gather the data, but impact doesn't happen overnight. So let's talk about timing and timelines of how to measure impact.
Well, I guess measuring the impact itself is, a year-round process. I think that, if you're tracking, I'll have to use a nonprofit example again, but volunteerism, right? And you want to know how many volunteers you have, the number of hours that they're putting in, figure out what they're, what they're doing and how they contributed. I mean, you're going to have events all year round that are going to have you, plugging in numbers to track all that stuff. So if you want to have these nice packaged up numbers at the end of each year, each quarter, to have these great things to go and tell your boss, your board, your customers, your donors, whoever it is, you're going to have to track these things, year round. It doesn't necessarily mean there's something happening every day, but think about the events that you have, think about ads and promotions you put out there and what comes of it. But start with that big number at the end of the quarter or the year that you want to share, and then you can work backwards and figure out what it is you need to track. So it's definitely an ongoing process. There's certainly companies and tools that you can use to help track it, or just take out a spreadsheet and start really simply if you're just getting going with it. The timeline to then dissect it and figure out how you're going to couple that with the stories and have marketing come from it to help with communications or fundraising is, a whole other story and a whole other process that, typically takes about, 3 months if you're talking about annual reports or impact reports like you and I were speaking of.
And also give yourself time to create an impact. It's not a magic wand, generally speaking. Sometimes there's a big effort that can swoop in and make a big change quickly. Let's say if a crisis happened and you really have to triage something, but impact often comes in baby steps, in milestones, to use one of my favorite words, inch stones, to use one of my other clients' favorite terms. And so you mentioned that, tracking things for a year, and you did name the company Yearly. So I think that's a good transition for me to ask you, what was your milestone moment when you decided to found or co-found Yearly, if there was one?
Yeah, I think it was when my co-founder, Jeff Rum, and I were meeting at the Silver Diner in Bethesda, Maryland, where the company's based. And he brought this idea to me and told me that there were, foundations and large nonprofits and community, community programs that were coming to an advertising agency he owned at the time and looking for custom solutions to build out digital reports on their website, because that's how you had to do this to get something like this done and have a polished, marketing or fundraising document. And I realized that at an organization, which was a national nonprofit I was working for, I was spending a lot of time and a lot of money to create reports, and neither of us nor our other nonprofit colleagues that I talked to at the time knew if they were getting read. So they're sharing all this impact, but they really didn't know if they were getting read because they were creating PDFs or they were printing it. They weren't tracking metrics. So what are you doing all this for? Because it takes months to put it together. And, I pulled my hair out over it with a team of 12 people writing the content, and the result may have moved the needle. I bet it did, but I didn't really know exactly what the answer was. So we realized that, building a platform that can give all organizations a polished way to show their impact was this kind of aha moment, and pretty awesome. And we just started building it out then. This was December 1st, 2018. And then we launched the company a couple months later.
That's awesome. So we're talking about you're helping people measure the impact of their impact report. And
Yes.
so the impact is endless. The impact is endless. So I think the takeaway here is always be measuring, always be keeping a file. And you will think that you're going to remember later, but the chances of that really is slim that you'll remember all the good stories that you have. So maybe it's as simple as a Google Doc that you put and you share with different stakeholders that can put things in. Maybe you send an email out once a week, especially if you have a marketing automation system or something, to ask people to put it in. Maybe there's a little form they can put in. And I'm going to say I'm guilty of that as well. I'm so fortunate to be a marketer helping so many individuals and businesses and nonprofits tell their story and make things happen. I mean, it's truly, I've been doing this for decades, and I get to wake up every day, and it's a job about building reputations, building results, building companies, building efforts, and it's still fun. But I need to be more diligent in writing down all those success stories as well. And it's one of the reasons that I created the Milestone Mindset Live show, was to showcase success stories of others. Again, I'm the host, the feature is the guest, but I choose the topics that will help my audience, the individuals, the entrepreneurs, small businesses, nonprofits to mid-sized companies. And it's great fun. So I hope all the viewers can have fun sharing their impact. And our contact information has been at the bottom of the screen the whole time. If either one of us can help you on the marketing strategy and implementation side or the impact reporting, please reach out to us. And Josh, you were saying that there's higher education. If you want to give a nod to some of the industries or verticals that you can help, please feel free to do that as we close out here.
Yeah, that's great. What you just said made me think about the idea that people say, hey, celebrate your wins. Don't forget to celebrate those wins. Think about what your wins are, and then find creative ways to get your audience's attention that maybe other people aren't doing. Try, one new thing in the next year, because there's a lot of distractions out there, and your audience can only pay so much attention to what you're doing. So the tips that you're talking about, Nancy, I think will really help people zero in, especially if they think about it in a creative way. And we're doing that with customers at Yearly in healthcare, social impact, higher ed, private and independent, K through 12 schools, religious organizations, general nonprofits and foundations. We really have customers, all over the board and all over the world that are looking to show off completely different types of impact. I mean, what we see from like the Arthritis Foundation, a customer of ours, is very different than what we see from a church or a private school, right? So, it's very individualized, but they're all doing it. We just want to have them find a faster way to do it.
Absolutely. And we'll close out the show with a thought for the future. If you are taking the time, which we both recommend that you do, to summarize your impact in a given year and tell the story, you will then be already setting the stage for your future communications to continue to build on the story. Impact is continuous. It grows. So that effort that it takes for you to close something out is really your launch of the next generations of your communications. So it is always a great investment in time to measure and document and share your impact. So I'll speak for both Josh and myself and wish you a fun closeout of the current year and a launch to the new year. And every day, you are making an impact. So enjoy the process.